Sir, we will wait 2-3 minutes. After then, you will start.
Okay, madam.
Okay.
Okay, madam, no problem.
Vijay, sir,
No, tell me, madam.
you can start.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening to all of you, first of all. So, are you able to hear my voice clearly? First of all, tell me that thing now, all of you. Right. Are you able to hear my voice clearly? Right. Yes, thank you. So, then please give me a reply, then I will start. Okay, thank you. So, today I'm going to explain about, so that is strength of material. First of all, I'm going to give it to you. So, how many marks you will get in GATE examination or in EAC examination? In GATE examination, so this is a subject which is common for both civil and mechanical. So ME and C. So in case of mechanical, you will get 7 to 8 marks, and in case of civil engineering, you will get 8 to 9 marks. So these are the marks that you will get in GATE examination. So an EAC examination, in case of mechanical, in case of civil engineering, we are getting approximately 30 marks. So in case of mechanical or civil engineering, so you have to concentrate on the subject. So you will get exactly 78 marks in GATE examination on this strength of material. So in the strength of material, we are having different types of chapters. I will give it to you. Chapter is very, very important in GATE point of view. So which chapter will get the more marks in GATE point of view, I will give to you later. I'll give the what are the chapters in strength of materials also. Before going to learn those things, I'm going to explain what is the introduction about the strength of material. So listen carefully what I am saying. So if you have any doubt, please ask me immediately. So I will clarify each and every doubt. So shall I start the class now? Right. So listen carefully here. So what is the name of the subject here? Strength of material. So here we are going to learn what is the strength of the any material. So here in our nature, generally materials are classified into two types. So all of you know very well. That is the first one is in the form of solid, and the second one is in the form of fluid. All of you know very well. So these materials are exists in our nature. One is in the form of solid and one is in the form of fluid. But in case of solids, we are also having different types of solids, so all of you know. But here I'm going to give three types of solids here. That is, all of you know very well. One is said to be elastic material, and one is said to be plastic material, and one is said to be a rigid material. These type of materials we are going to use in our mechanical and civil point of view. So in case of elastic material, all of you know what is the definition of elastic material very well. So if you apply any force, I'll give it to you. What are the forces which are acting on the material later? So if you apply any type of force on this material undergoes some expansion or deformation or change in shape or change in dimension, like that. If you remove the external force, the body regains its original dimension or original shape. Such type of materials are named as elastic materials. So all of you know very well, very clearly. So most of the students will know very well now. What is plastic material? If you remove the external force, the body does not regain its original dimensions or original position. Such type of material is named as a plastic material. Listen carefully now. Now, what is a rigid material? If you apply any type of force, the body does not have any change in shape, so there is no any change in dimension of the material. Such type of material is named as rigid material. So these are the materials we are going to use in our strength of material, but here we are going to learn only two variables in our strength of material. Listen carefully. What are the variables we have to learn in strength of materials? Only two variables. That is, I'm giving clearly, first one is named as sigma and second one is named as epsilon. What is sigma? All of you know, sigma is nothing but stress and epsilon is nothing but strain. So the entire strength of material, we are going to learn what is the value of stress, whether it is maximum or minimum. If it is maximum, what is that value? If it is minimum, what is that value? Where it is maximum, where it is minimum, we are going to calculate. At the same time, we are going to calculate the strain value also. Now, so if you see these two things, that is a stress and strain, which one is the first one now? So I hope the strain is the first one. After that, we are going to calculate the stress value. So I'm going to find only two variables in our strength of material, that is nothing but stress and strain. After finding these two values, I'm going to write the relation between stress and strain into one dimensional, in two dimensional, and in three-dimensional state of stress. Are you get the, are you clear about this one now? What I am saying now? So materials are basically classified into three types: elastic, plastic, and rigid materials. But most of the cases we are using elastic materials. Why? Because that material follows Hooke's law. I'll give it to you what is Hooke's law. Most of the students also know about what is Hooke's law. So most of the materials belongs to elastic, so it must be follows Hooke's law. So if it follows Hooke's law, then we can write the relation between stress and strain, whether it is in one-dimensional state of stress, whether it is two-dimensional state of stress, whether it is three-dimensional state of stress. Now, these are the materials we are using in our strength of material. Now, what are the forces which are acting on these materials? Listen carefully. Those are very, very important here. How many variables we have to calculate here? Two variables. What are the values? One is stress and one is strain value. And here, what are the forces acting on these materials? First one is nothing but tensile force, and the second one is named as compressive force, and third one is named as shear force, and the fourth one is named as bending force, and fifth one is named as twisting force. So these are the forces which are going to acting on different types of materials. What are the materials here? Elastic, plastic, rigid materials. But which material we are using most of the engineering field? Elastic material. Why? Because it follows Hooke's law. Then we can write the relation between the stress and strain. Listen carefully. These are the forces we are going to apply on any type of material. When the material is said to be under D form, then we can find what is the value of strain. After that, we are going to find what is the value of stress. Now, in case of fluid here, what are the values we are going to find it? Only three variables. Listen carefully here. That is, first one is nothing but pressure, and the second one is nothing but velocity. What is the first one now? First one is nothing but pressure, velocity, and third one is nothing but force. What is force? Force is nothing but M into A. What is acceleration? Acceleration is nothing but change in velocity with respect to time. If you know the pressure, I can find the velocity. If you know the velocity, I can find the acceleration. If you know the acceleration, I can find the force. If you know the force, I can find the work. If you know the work, I can find the power. If you know the power, I can find the efficiency. So this is the sequence of operation of different types of variables in our fluid mechanics. But in case of fluid mechanics, we are going to calculate only three variables. One is said to be pressure, velocity, and force. But in case of solids, we are calculating only two values. I already told you that is sigma and epsilon, that is stress and strain, under tensile, under compressive, under shear, under bending, under twisting. Whatever the force you have to take it on the material, we are going to calculate tensile stress, compressive stress, shear stress, bending stress, twisting. That is also named as torsional shear stress. Or get my point? So this is the uh, different types of materials we are going to use in our so civil and mechanical point of view. These are the types of forces which are acting on the materials, and these are the types of uh, forces here now. So now I'm going to give it to you here. What is the meaning of strength of material? That is the basic thing we are going to learn here. So listen carefully here. So first of all, I'm going to give it to you one thing. Listen carefully. Depending on the forces, I'm going to divide the entire strength of materials into chapters. So listen carefully what I am saying now. I am saying here, depending on these forces, the entire strength of material is going to divide into number of chapters. So here, what are the chapters here? Listen carefully here. What are the chapters we have in our strength of material? So listen carefully. I'm going to give it to you, and after that, I'm going to give it to you how many marks are contained by each chapter in our gate point of view also. The first chapter is all of you know very well. That is nothing but simple stresses and strains. So why we are putting simple stresses and strains? In this chapter, we are going to discuss about only two values. What is the values? I have already told you. If you take any chapter, we have to find only two values. What is the value of stress? What is the value of strain? But here, in case of simple stresses and strain, we are going to find the value of stress and strain under only two forces. That is tensile or compressive forces. Here I am going to consider tension and compression forces. when the component is subject to either tensile force or compressive force. Now, how to indicate tensile force on the component? So this is the component. I'm going to take it. If you indicate this force like this, so this force is always away from the body. So this force is always named as tensile force. It is always positive. Is always positive. So when this component is subject to tensile force, the body undergoes deformation. During the deformation, its dimensions will change. Then there must be a strain. If the dimension changes, there must be a strain. Then, first of all, find the strain. After that, we have to find the stress value. Now, how to indicate the compressive force here? This is the component we are going to indicate. This is the force which is always towards the component or towards the body. Such type of force is named as compressive force. It is always negative. Why? Because dimensions will reduce in the direction of action of the force. So here, these are the two forces we are going to consider in this chapter. So by the application of these forces, I'm going to find tensile stress, I'm going to find compressive stress. I'm going to find tensile strain, I'm going to find compressive strain. I have already told you, listen carefully now. What I told you now, in every chapter, we are going to calculate only two values. That is, what is the value of stress and strain. After that, we have to write the relation between the stress and strain also. When the component is subject to uniaxial or biaxial or triaxial, whatever it is, I can write the relation between the stress and strain by using Hooke's law. So that what I am saying here, in simple stresses and strain, we are going to consider only tension and compression. By the application of this tension and compression, we are going to find two types of values. One is stress and one is strain, either under tensile force or compressive force. One chapter is clear. So from this chapter, you will get exactly 2 marks. Exactly 2 marks. But and under this chapter, we are having subtopics. I will give the explanation. What are the subtopics in the simple stress and strain? What are the important topic and gate point of view? So we have to concentrate. I will give the explanation later also. So this is the chapter number 1. In the chapter number 1, we are going to consider only two types of forces, that is tensile force and compressive force. So how many force we can apply on the component? 5 types of forces: tensile, compressive, shear, bending, and twisting. So listen carefully. In the chapter number 2, I am writing here complex stresses. Complex stresses or principal stresses. Principal stresses and strains. Principal stresses and strains, or we can write complex stresses. What is meaning of complex stress? When a component is subjected to more than one stress. More than one stress. That's why I told you. That's why I told you. That's why I told you uniaxial state of stress, biaxial state of stress, triaxial state of stress. There are different types of state of stress are there. But here, when a component is subject to more than one stress, that is named as complex to state of stress. So what is meaning of principal stresses and strain? Principal is nothing but, so among the all the stresses, one of the stress is maximum, one of the stress is minimum. But according to the maximum stress only, the component goes to fail. So we are going to design the component without failure. So the component must be fail under maximum stress. So that I want to find what is the value of maximum stress. For example, if you take a shaft here, if you take a shaft here, when the shaft is subject to tensile force, when the shaft is subject to bending force, when the shaft is subject to twisting force. How many forces are acting on the shaft now? So there are 3 types of forces which are acting on the shaft. But here, so due to which force the component is goes to fail. I want to find that value now. So if you know that value, I can design the component more or equal to that value, then the component never goes to fail. So that we are going to study about complex state of stresses or principal state of stresses or strains. So in this chapter, we are going to consider all forces. We are going to consider all forces. So this chapter will also you will get 2 marks. Very, very important chapter. We have to take care about this one. In this case, we are going to find the principal stresses and strains according to two methods. One is said to be analytical method. One is said to be graphical method. In the graphical method, we know very well that is also named as a Morse circle diagram or Morse method also. Or you got it right. So in the complex state of stress or principal stresses and strains, we are going to consider all forces. That is tensile force, compressive force, bending force, twisting force, and shear force, whatever you take it. So we have to consider all forces. So now here, third chapter, I'm going to give it to you. That is shear force and bending moment diagrams. Shear force and bending moment diagram. So here we are going to find where the shear force is maximum, where the bending moment is maximum. So why we are going to draw the shear force diagram and bending moment diagram? By seeing the diagram, we can easily identify where the shear force is maximum, where the bending moment is maximum. If you know where the shear is maximum, at that point automatically the component goes to fail. Where the bending is maximum, at that point the component is also goes to fail. So that I'm going to increase the strength of that material at that point where the shear is maximum, where the bending is maximum. I'll give it to you later how to increase the strength of the material at the failure point. I'll give it to you later now. So, in case of shear force, in case of bending moment, I'm going to consider the force that is nothing but bending force. So here, I'm taking one component is named as a cantilever beam. All of you know very well. That is one end is fixed, the other end is free. I'm going to apply some vertical load like this. It is named as bending force. So due to this force, this beam may bend like this or this beam may fail like this. How many failures we are getting here? Two types of failures. So one is said to be bending failure, one is said to be shear failure. So here we are going to find the shear force due to this failure. We are going to find the moment due to this failure. So I'm going to find what is the value of maximum shear, what is the value of maximum bending moment when these beams are subject to vertical or normal loads. Or got it? This normal load is nothing but here vertical load. It is named as bending load. So due to this bending load, we are going to find where the shear is maximum, where the bend moment is maximum. So we have to remember one thing. So in this chapter, we are going to consider only bending force here. Only consider bending force, or we can assume like this also, the normal force, which is perpendicular to the axis of the body. So that's why it is named as normal force. It is also said to be bending force here now. Right. So here is also we are getting, so sometimes 2 marks or sometimes we are getting 1 mark. Okay, so listen carefully. So this is the basic chapter, that is a simple stress and strain, how to calculate stresses. In this chapter, we have to calculate stress and strain under tension and compression. And here, this is the complex state of stress and the principal strain. Here, we are consider all forces. And this one is also very, very important. So you have to draw the shear force diagram and bending moment diagram very easily. There is no any difficulty to draw the shear force and bending moment diagram. Very easily we can draw it. So that's why, I mean, get point of view, they will ask sometimes for 1 mark and sometimes for 2 marks also. So, but this one is almost we will get 2 marks. So listen carefully now. All right. So this is our chapter number 3. So chapter number 4, that is nothing but bending stresses in beams. Bending stresses in beams. Bending stresses in beams. What is the bending stress in beams here? Why we are named as bending stress and beams? When the beam is subject to any type of force, whether it is tension or compression or whatever it is. So if you take at any point on the beam, there must be two types of stresses. One is said to be normal, one is said to be shear. Sometimes normal is maximum, shear is minimum. Listen carefully what I am saying now. For example, I am taking, this is the component which is subject to some force, So here, like tensile force, listen carefully. I am taking one point on this component. So what I am saying here, at that component, there must be a two types of stresses. One is normal to the surface, one is parallel to the surface. But in some cases, the normal stresses are maximum. In some cases, shear stresses are maximum. So what I am saying here, bending stresses in beams means here normal stresses are maximum, shear stresses are minimum. That is the assumption we are going to consider. That means here normal stresses are greater than shear stresses. In the next chapter is nothing but chapter number 5, that is shear stresses in beams. Shear stresses in beams. In this chapter, shear stresses are greater than normal stresses. But if you take any component which is subject to any type of force, there must be a normal stress, there must be a shear stress at any point along the length of the beam. But at that point, sometimes normal is maximum, sometimes shear is maximum. I want to find which stress is maximum at that given point on the length of the beam or along the length of the beam. I want to find it. So in the bending stresses, we are going to consider bending force. So in the shear stresses, we are going to consider shear force. What is the meaning of shear force? It is always parallel to the surface. All of you know very well now. Or you got it? Right. So here, these are the 5 chapters. So this chapter is the shear stress in beams is very, very important in case of civil point of view. And in case of bending stresses in beams is important for both for civil and mechanical. You will get exactly 1 mark here. Exactly 1 mark here. Or you got it? All right. So these are the 5 chapters. Very simple stresses, complex stresses, shear force and bending diagram, bending stress and shear stresses. Here in bending stresses in beams, we have to find what is the value of maximum bending stress. On shear stress and beams, we have to find what is the maximum shear stress and maximum shear strain also. It is also maximum bending strain also. So what I told you at the starting of the class, so you have to find only two types of values. What one is said to be stress, one is said to be strain. Are you clear about this one? So these are the 5 chapters. So I'm going to give it to remaining chapters also here now. That is, next one is nothing but next one is nothing but torsion of shafts here. Torsion of shafts. So this is also very, very important chapter in civil point of view and mechanical point of view. So here we are also getting 2 marks here. 2 marks here. So listen carefully. At the end of this chapters, I'll give what are the most important chapters in gate point of view we have to prepare now. So in torsion of shafts, we are going to consider only twisting force. That is always parallel to the surface. So this is the twisting force. This is the shaft, which is subject to twisting force equal and opposite. Then the shaft will rotate either clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. Then we can find the torque value. Torque or torsional twisting moment all are same. So in this case also, we are going to find what is the maximum torque acting on the shaft or maximum torque acting on any component. We have to find it depending on the forces acting on this component. So in this chapter also, we are going to find what is the maximum torque or maximum power transmitted by the shaft and what is the maximum shear stress in the shaft. We have to find this one. So this is chapter number 6. And chapter number 7, we know the deflection of beams. Deflection of beams. So this one is very, very important chapter in case of both civil and mechanical point of view, but especially in case of civil point of view, very, very important. So that so we take this one is also 2 marks. You will get it in gate examination. In deflection of beams, here we are slope and deflection. It is named as slope and deflection of beams. So if you take a beam like this, which is said to be a cantilever beam. So if you take one point on the beam like that, A. If you apply some force which is perpendicular to the x of the beam, then the beam automatically will bend like this. then the point is also displaced from this point to this point. So this is the displacement of this point. The displacement is nothing but y. Y is called displacement or deflection. Deflection. So if you draw a tangent here, if you draw a tangent at this point, the tangent always makes some angle with the horizontal. That is nothing but theta. So theta is nothing but dy by dx. Why? Because this one is dx and this one is dy. So dy by dx. And y is nothing but deflection or displacement. So in slope and deflection of beams, we are going to calculate only what is the maximum slope, what is the maximum deflection of the beam when the beam is subject to different types of loads and beam having different types of supports. I'll give it to you later. So here is also we are going to consider only one type of force, that is nothing but normal force, that is also named as bending force. So it is nothing but beam. Or you got it? All right. And chapter number 8 here, that is nothing but pressure vessel. Is nothing but pressure vessels. So what is the meaning of pressure vessel here? So pressure vessel is defined like this. So all of you know it. So there are different types of definitions are there, but here I'm going to give it one simple definition of pressure vessel. So if you take any ball here, so inside there must be air, outside there must be air. So between this inside air and outside air, there must be a layer is exists. That is nothing but a solid material. This is a ball. For example, if you take a tennis ball, inside there must be air, outside there must be air. So this air also applies some force inside the ball, and this material also applies some force on this inside air. So there must be two forces. That is inside pressure, and next one is outside pressure. So here, when the inside pressure is greater than outside pressure, or I'm writing outside pressure is greater than inside pressure, you can take any condition, no problem. If you take any condition, if you take any condition, then it is said to be a pressure vessel. Then it is said to be a pressure vessel. Inside pressure is more than outside pressure, or outside pressure is more than inside pressure, then it is said to be a pressure vessel. So in this case, these pressure vessels may fail along a longitudinal direction, so across the cross-sectional direction. So we are getting two types of stresses. All of you know very well. So I think I hope all of you know very well those stresses. What are the stresses? That is, one is said to be hoop stresses, one is said to be longitudinal stresses. So we are going to find when the hoop stress is maximum, when the longitudinal stress is maximum. But among these two, which one is maximum, which one is minimum? We are going to calculate in pressure vessels. But simple definition is inside pressure is more than outside pressure, or outside pressure is more than inside pressure. Such a type of vessel is always named as pressure vessel. So the pressure vessel is defined also in another way also. There is no doubt, that is depending on D by D ratio. I'll give it to you in the chapter what is D by D ratio. Depending on D by D ratio also, we can classify which type of pressure vessel it is, whether it is a thick pressure vessel or thin pressure vessel, we can classify it so easily. Have you got it? So from this chapter, we will get only 1 mark. So listen carefully. You get 1 mark. So it is very simple. So we have to remember only two formulae. That is, what is the formula for hoop stress? What is the formula for longitudinal stress? They will ask question, find the maximum stress in the cylindrical vessel or spherical vessel. They will give it to you. Then we can find which stress is maximum automatically. We can find it very easily. Right. So these are the chapter torsion of shafts and deflection of slope and deflection of beams, and this is the pressure vessel. And next I'm going to give it to you. Here 8 chapter is over. So and the 9th chapter, all of you know, that is nothing but columns and strut. That is 9 chapters. Column and strut. So in this column and strut, so for example, if you take a column that is said to be a vertical column, it is like a vertical cantilever beam. So when the load is exactly acting along the axis of the column, it is nothing but axial loaded member. When the load is acting away from the center, it is named as eccentric load. So when a column is subject to axial load, when the column is subject to eccentric load, whatever the condition we can take it, the column must be fail under two ways. Listen carefully. The column fails under two ways. One is said to be under crushing failure. One is said to be bending failure. Bending failure here it is named as buckling. So the column fail like this, the column fail like this. It is named as buckling, it is named as crushing. So which column fails under crushing? Which column fails under buckling? When the column fails under crushing, what is the maximum crushing stress? When the column fails under bending, what is the maximum bending stress? So that in columns and stacks also, we are going to calculate two types of stress. One is crushing stress, one is buckling stress, that is also named as bending stress. In some cases, bending stress is maximum. In some cases, crushing stress is maximum. All of you know, in case of long columns, bending stress is maximum. In case of short column, crushing stress is maximum. So, you got it? So, in this case also, we are going to consider which type of force it is, compressive force, that is acting exactly at the center or away from the center. If it is exactly acting at the center, it is named as axial loaded column. If it is away from the center, it is named as eccentrically loaded column. So in these columns and structs also, I'll give it to you what are the definition of column and structs, what are the difference between struct and column in this chapter. So in the from this one, we'll get also one mark in gate point of view. So not more than 1 mark. So you have to concentrate on this chapter very less. So you get 1 mark on this one now. So and next one, 10th one is nothing but strain energy. Strain energy. So this is the very important chapter. They will ask questions. Find the slope and deflection according to energy method and according to strain energy method. So they will ask questions like this. So that we have to learn about strain energy. What is meaning of strain energy? What is meaning of strain here? If you apply any type of force on this component, the component undergoes some deformation, then it is said to be under strain. When the component is under deformation, then it is having some energy during the deformation. Or you get my point? So listen carefully. For example, I am taking a small elastic wire which is fixed at one end, other end is free. I'm going to add some small weight at the other end of the elastic wire. Then what happen here? Due to the small weight, the elastic wire will extend from this point to this point. So this is named as extension of the elastic wire or deformation of the elastic wire. What are the deformation here? Delta L, and the length of the wire is L. Now here this weight of the ball is nothing but P, that is nothing but force, or we can write here it is also is equal to weight W. Or you got my point or not? So here what I am saying here, so when the ball moves from this point, it undergoes some displacement. But here the displacement is also named as deformation of the string now or wire now. Or you got my point or not? So here there must be some work is done by this force on the wire. Work is done by the force on the wire. So here, during the deformation, there must be some work done. There must be some work done. What is the work done here? Work done is nothing but force into displacement. What is the force here? P here. What is the displacement here? Deformation, delta L. So P into delta L is nothing but work done. So work done is nothing but one form of energy. One form of energy. That energy is stored in this wire during the deformation or during the strain condition. That's why it is named as strain energy. Or you got my point? Strain is also named as energy stored in the material during the deformation. Then it is said to be strain energy. So what I am telling you, we can find this energy under tension, compression, shear, bending, twisting, and impact load, suddenly applied load, so gradual applied load. There are different types of cases are there to find this strain energy. If you know this formula, then I can apply this formula for every case. Then we can find the what is the energy stored in the material. So this chapter is very simple chapter. So depending on this formula, we can calculate what is the formula under bending, under shearing, under twisting. We can calculate very easily. So are you got it? What is strain energy now? So strain energy is nothing but energy stored in a material during deformation. What is happening during the deformation? During the deformation, the material undergoes some extension of the length. So here that is also under displacement. So there must be work done by the force on this wire in this example. So I can find easily what is work. Work is equal to force into displacement. Force is nothing but weight of this ball, that is P, and what is the extension of this wire now? Delta L, that is displacement. So P into delta L is nothing but energy stored in the wire. That energy is named as strain energy. So these are the chapters in our GATE syllabus. So in all the chapters we are going to learn very well. That is chapter number 2, that is principal stresses and strain. And next one is nothing but deflection of beams, slope and deflection of beams. That is also very, very important chapter. And next one is nothing but torsion of shafts. That is very, very important gate point of view. And next one is simple stress and strain. So first of all, you have to concentrate on the 4 chapters. Remaining chapters are very simple. So that is bending stresses in beams, shear stress and beams, and strain energy. Only one formula we can use it. In bending stress in beams, we can use this formula. M by I is equal to sigma B by Y is equal to E by R. In case of shear stresses, we can use tau is equal to F into A into Y bar divided by I into B. We can use this formula. So in every chapter, we can use only one formula to find the maximum shear, to find the maximum bending stress. And at the same time, in columns and sucks also, we are calculating only critical load here. That is nothing but PC, only one, calculating one value, critical load under eccentric load or under axial load. According to different types of methods, I will give it to you. So in case of strain energy, we are going to find what are the energies stored in the material during deformation. In different types of cases under tension, compression, bending, and shearing, like that. We can take any case. We can find very easily what is the value of strain. So what I am telling you, what are the chapters very very important get point of view. You have to concentrate more on the chapter number 1 and chapter number 2. That is simple stress and strains and complex state of stresses or principal stresses and strains and the torsion of shafts and the deflection of beams. After that, we can concentrate on shear force and bend moment also. Remaining things are very easy, so we can put a less uh, concentration on those remaining chapters. So this is the uh, analysis of your strength of material. So what are the chapters in our strength of materials? Which chapter having marks in our gate point of view? So maximum marks we will get 8 to 7 or 8 to 9 or 8 to 7 according to the civil and mechanical point of view. So all of it clear about this one now, first of all. So if you get 8 marks from strength of material, at the same time you will get from fluid mechanics also you will get 10 to 11 or 8 to 10 marks from civil and mechanical point of view. So if you prepare thoroughly these two subjects, you will get exactly 20 to 9, 18 marks like that. Okay, so take care about those two subjects. You will get exactly 20 marks. Otherwise, 19 marks. If you prepare mathematics, approximately you will have 25 marks. Then you will get exactly qualify in GATE examination. If you prepare further more core subjects, then you will get the good rank in GATE examination. So keep these points in your mind. So take care about the chapter. So if you have any doubt when I am explaining the subject, please ask immediately. So no problem, I will give the explanation. Otherwise, you will send to your doubts to my WhatsApp number. I will give the explanation immediately. No problem. So all of you clear up to this one now? So anybody have doubts on this now? Anybody have doubts on this? Please tell me. Anybody is there? Right. So here, now I'm going to start with chapter number 1. That is nothing but simple stresses and strains here now. That is simple stresses and strains. Listen carefully here. Writing here, simple stresses and strains. I have already told you. So, what are the forces we are going to consider in this chapter? So, we are going to consider only 2 types of forces in this chapter, that is tensile force and compressive force. By the application of these two forces, we are going to calculate what is the value of tensile stress, what is the value of compressive stress, what is the value of tensile strain, and what is the value of compressive strain under tensile force, under compressive force. Listen carefully. So before going to learn about this chapter, simple stresses and strain, I want to give it to you what is the meaning of SOM, that is strength of material. Strength of material. Listen carefully now. So, for example, if you take a material, this material is composed of molecules. These are the molecules which are very close to each other. Listen carefully. Which are very close to each other. These are the particles which are closer to each other. So between the particles, which force are exit now? So they are contact to each other. So these two particles are same or different? These two particles are same. So that there must be one force is exit between the same particle. That is named as cohesive forces. That is named as cohesive forces. When the cohesive forces increases, what is the strength of this material now? Is also increased. That means the material is said to be hard material. So the material is said to be hard material. Or you got my point? So if the force of attraction between the particles is goes on reduces. So can you reduce the force of attraction between the particles? Yes, I can reduce the force of attraction between the particles. How? If you heat it, if you supply some quantity of heat energy, then what is the force of attraction between the particles? That is nothing but internal forces. Here, the force of attraction between the particles is named as internal force. Internal force, that force is named as cohesive force. Now, this material having internal force, this material having internal force, that is also named as R. R is named as internal force of the material. So if you take any body, if you take for example our body is also having some internal resistance, that is also named as immunity system. Or got my point or not? Your immune system is working very good, then our body is also working good, right? Is it right or not? So R is nothing but internal resisting force of the material. Now I'm going to apply external force on this material. External force. What are the external force we are going to apply here? I have already told you. One is tensile force. Second one is compressive force. Third one is shear force. Fourth one is bending force. And last one is twisting force. So these are the forces I can apply on this material. I get my point or not? For example, I'm going to apply tensile force on this material. This is internal or external? This is external force. This is external force. This is internal force. So in the case of solids, internal force is due to which one? Cohesive forces. Listen carefully. When the cohesive force are very, very less, that will becomes a gas. In case of gases, what is the force of attraction between the molecules? Very, very less. In case of liquids, cohesive force are more than gases. In case of solids, cohesive force are very, very greater than liquids and gases. So that in this case of solids, cohesive force are more. So these are nothing but solids. So here, these solids are having internal force and we are applying some external force. What I am saying here, when the external force must be is equal to internal force. Now tell me, there is any deformation of the material? Now tell me, there is any deformation of the material? No, there is no any deformation of the material. When we get the deformation of the material, when P is greater than R, that is external force is always more than the internal resisting force, then the material undergoes deformation. After that, we are finding the change in dimensions. After that, we are finding the strain value. After that, we are going to find the stress value. After that, we are going to write the relation between the stress and the strain value according to Hooke's law in one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and three-dimensional state of stress. Are you got it? Now here, if you take any material, that material must be having some internal force. So if you cut this material, if you cut this material, if you cut this material here, I'm going to draw the free body diagram. So this is the free body diagram of this right portion. So this is the force externally, and this is the force given by the material internally. So this is named as so according to Newton's third law, every reaction there is equivalent opposite reaction when the body is said to be under equilibrium condition here. In this case, so when the body is said to be under equilibrium condition, this P must be is equal to R. When P is more than R, the material is said to be under deform. So listen carefully. What I am saying here, then the material is said to be under deform. When the material is said to be under deform, then automatically we can find the strain value according to your dimensions along lengthwise, widthwise, thickness-wise, along the diameter-wise, we can find the strain value. After that, we can find the stress value according to your Hooke's law. Right. So when the material is said to be deformed, so when the material is said to be under deform now, so we have to apply maximum force or minimum force. Maximum force. If you apply the maximum, that is more than the internal resistance force, at that point the material starts to deform. Or you got my point or not? So what is the meaning of strength of material here? So it is the internal resistance force. Listen carefully. I am telling about the definition of SOM, strength of material. It is the internal resistance force offered by the body against the deformation. Against the deformation. My aim is I want to deform the material. But the internal forces, what they do now, they are always working against the deformation. But my aim is to deform the material. But this internal force does not allow the deformation. When this material allow the deformation, automatically the P is more than the R value, the material starts to deform. Right, listen carefully. So, so what is strength of material? It is a internal resistance force offered by the body against the deformation within the elastic limit. Within the elastic limit. That means that is up to certain limit. It always opposes the deformation. That limit is always named as elastic limit. Or you got my point? What I am saying? If you increase the external force at a particular force, the body starts to deform. Starts to deform. That is having some limit. So there must be a limit. That limit is nothing but elastic limit. That limit is named as its strength. That limit is named as its strength. Or you got my point? Listen carefully. Once again, I'll give you the definition. So listen carefully now. It is defined as the internal resistance force offered by the body against the deformation within elastic limit. That limit is named as its strength of material. For example, if you take my body carries approximately 60 or 70 kg. 70, for example, that is my limit of carrying weight. So if you put more than 70, my body undergoes some changes. That is nothing but that is said to be under strain. After that, we can find the stress value. So that is very, very simple example I have given to you. So this is the definition of strength of material. Or you got it? So the strength is always depends on which forces? Coercive forces. When the coercive force are less, strength is also less. When the coercive force are more, strength is also more. What is the definition of strength of material? Internal resistance force offered by the body. So against the deformation within within elastic limit. Within elastic limit. That is named as strength of material. Or you got it? Right. Now I'm going to give it to you. So in the simplest instance, we are going to consider two types of forces, tensile force and compressive forces. Now, first of all, I'm going to give you the definition of stress here. Stress here. It is indicated by symbol sigma. So all of you know, stress is always defined as load per unit area. So what is the definition here? So listen carefully. Same definition. Internal resistance force offered by the body against the deformation within the elastic limit per unit area. Here I'm writing per unit area. Then it is said to be stress. Then it is said to be stress. So it is meter square, it is newtons. So Newton per meter square is named as 1 Pascal. So that is the definition of stress. Listen carefully here. What is the definition of stress here? So the definition same as for this, per at the end of the definition we can write per unit area of cross section. So what I'm saying, internal resistance force offered by the body against the deformation within the elastic limit per unit area of cross section, that is named as stress. Or you got it? So what are the units of stress here? Stress is always measured Pascal, mega, kilopascal. So I'm writing here kilopascal, megapascal, and gigapascal. Here Pascal means 1 Pascal is equal to 1 Newton per meter square. 1 kilopascal is equal to 10 to the power of 3 pascals. And 1 megapascal is equal to 10 to the power of 6 pascals. 1 gigapascal is equal to 10 to the power of 9 pascals. So this is the units we are also know it very well. So if you are a civil or mechanical engineer, so we can easily identify the units of the stress now. Now here, what are the types of stresses we are going to calculate here now? So here we are going to calculate only two types of stress. One is tensile stress and compressive stress. But here, types of stresses. Generally, stresses are two types. Generally, stresses are two types. One is said to be normal stress. Normal stress. One is said to be shear stress. Listen carefully. What I told you here at the beginning of the class, that is, for example, if you take one component and the component is subject to forces like this, it is named as biaxial state of stress. So in two direction, the force is acting, or in two direction, the stress is acting. If you take it any point, if you take it any point on the material, so I told you already at that point, there are two types of stresses. One is, for example, if you take this is the plane, one is perpendicular to the plane, one is parallel to the plane. Perpendicular to the plane is nothing but normal stress, and parallel to the is nothing but shear stress. So there are two types of stresses will exist now. That is, one is normal stress, one is shear stress here. But here, among the two stresses, in some cases, one of the stress is maximum, one of the stress is minimum. That is, sometimes shear is maximum, normal is minimum. Sometimes normal is maximum, shear is minimum. So we can take like this. So we have two types of stresses here. One is normal stress and shear stress. In normal stresses, we are having again tensile stress is also normal stress, compressive stress is also normal stress, and bending stress is also normal stress. Why? Because the three types of stresses are which are perpendicular to the cross section of the component. So these three stresses are always parallel to the cross section of the component. So that those are always named as normal stresses. So shear stress is nothing but tau value. That is, there are two types of shear. That is pure shear and normal shear also is there. So here, that is also torsional shear. So shear is indicated by the tau here. So here, tensile stress, compressive stress, bending stress, three comes under normal stresses. It is tau is nothing but only shear stresses. Under pure shear, under torsional shear also, we are getting two types of shear also again. So this is the definition of stress, and this is the types of stresses. We know that. Then these are the units of stresses. All of you know it. Then I'm going to give it to you after stress. We know very well what is the definition of strain here. I'm going to explain what is the value of strain here. Listen carefully. After that, I'm going to give it a relation between the stress and strain also. So listen carefully here. So here I'm going to write it. What is the value of strain and what is the definition of strain? Some textbooks they indicate as epsilon, or sometimes it is indicated by symbol E. So these are the symbols of strain value. All of you know it. What is the definition of strain here? What is the definition of strain here? Strain is always defined when the component is said to be under deformation. Or you got it? when the component is said to be under deformation. When the component is said to be under deformation, the deformation will take place along lengthwise also, along widthwise also, along thickness wise also, and along the diameter wise also. I'll give it to you, right? So here, strain is defined as change in dimension to change in dimension. It is the ratio of change in dimension to original dimension. Original dimension. All right. So we are having different types of dimensions for different types of components. So for example, if you take this is the component, which is said to be a rectangular component. So how many dimensions contained by this rectangular component? Three dimensions: length, width, and thickness. I am taking another component that is said to be cylindrical component. So how many dimensions contained by the cylindrical component? Length and diameter. And I am taking this spherical component that is a ball. So it is a sphere. Then, so how many dimensions contained by this one now? Only diameter. Only diameter. Here, one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional. Here having only one dimensional along x and y and g. D. Here is a length and diameter. Here is length, width, and diameter. So this strain along four directions: lengthwise, widthwise, thickness-wise, and diameter-wise. So here, what I am saying here, strain along length we are getting, and next one is strain along width we are getting, and next one is strain along thickness we are getting, and strain along diameter wise we are getting. All of you get it? So it is named as linear strain, and the remaining all are lateral strain. Listen carefully. So for example, I am taking this is linear, the remaining all are lateral. Why? Because if you take this one is linear, length is linear, width and thickness both are perpendicular to linear. Listen carefully, be careful. What I am told you. So if you take L is linear, width and thickness both are perpendicular to linear, so that width and thickness both are said to be lateral strain. Or you got it? If B is linear, if B is linear and L and T both are said to be lateral. So what I am saying, what I am telling you, so if you take any one of the strain is linear, remaining three are lateral. So here there are two types of strain, linear strain and lateral strain, and one more strain is also there, that is nothing but shear strain. So here I am writing, that is epsilon L is equal to delta L by L, and epsilon B is equal to delta B by B, and epsilon T is equal to delta T by T, epsilon D is equal to delta D by D. So these are the different types of strains here. So linear strain along lengthwise. If you take it, length is linear and remaining all are lateral. If width is linear, we can assume it, then remaining all are also lateral. So here we know that how many types of strains here. So strains are two types. Types of strains here. Types of strains here. One is said to be a linear strain, and one is said to be lateral strain, and last one is nothing but shear strain. I'll give it to you. What is the explanation about this shear strain? So careful about these things now. Types of strains. Strains are three types. One is linear strain. So we can take along length is linear, remaining are lateral. Width is linear, remaining are lateral. We can take any one is linear, remaining all are lateral. So linear, lateral, and last one is shear strain. What is shear strain here? So listen carefully. For example, if you take a component which is fixed at one end, which is fixed at one end, and this point is A, this point is B. I'm going to apply some force like this, which is parallel to the surface of the component, and the support will also give some reactive force, which is against the applied force. Both are having same magnitude, but directions are opposite, so that this component will deform like this. This component will deform like this. So this deformation I'm going to indicate as phi. So that is angular displacement here of the point A to A dash. A to A dash, or we can take B to B dash also. This height of the component is nothing but how much? L, or we can take height also. And this point is displaced from this point is nothing but I am going to take as delta L. Listen carefully here. This point is displaced after applying this force, which is parallel to surface. When the force is parallel to surface, that force is nothing but shear force. Listen carefully. So here, this is the height of the component. So this is the displacement of the component. So when you write the tan phi value, if you write tan phi value, I am writing delta L by L. Delta L by L here. Delta L by L. So if this angle is very small, then phi is equal to delta L by L. So this phi is named as shear strain. Phi is named as shear strain. So are you got it? So here strain is defined as it is the ratio of change in dimension to original dimension. And what are the types of strains here? There are different types of strains are there. Linear strain, lateral strain, shear strain. So linear is, we can take any one is linear and remaining all are lateral. And shear strain is this one, I have already given the explanation. And what are the units of the strain now? No units. No units. So 3 points is clear on strain. So definition of strain is clear, units of strain is clear, types of strain is clear. Also stress definition is clear, types of units of stress is clear, and types of stress is also clear. So stress is over and strain is over. Now I'm going to give it to you. What is the relation between the stress and strain? What is the relation between stress and strain? I'm going to give it to you. If you want to write the stress and strain relation, you have to know Hooke's law here. You have to know Hooke's law here. All of you know it. So I want to apply the Hooke's law in one-dimensional state of stress, two-dimensional state of stress, and three-dimensional state of stress. That means when it is subject to tensile or compressive. Tensile compressive is only uniaxial or not. For example, if you take a component, so I'm going to apply, this is the stress along x direction, sigma x. It is a tensile stress. So it is under tension. It is tensile stress. So it is only one direction, x. It is named as one-dimensional state of stress. If the component is like this, if the component is like this, sigma x, sigma x, sigma y, sigma y. So this is the component having two-dimensional. So having two normal stresses along x and along y. It is named as two-dimensional state of stress. Two-dimensional state of stress. And the third one automatically we can write it here. So this is the component. So this is the component. We are having x direction, we are having y direction, we are having z direction, sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z. So this is named as three-dimensional state of stress. Now, if the compound is said to be one-dimensional state of stress or two-dimensional state of stress or three-dimensional state of stress, whether it is a rectangular component or a cylindrical component or any type of shape of the component, whatever it is, I'm going to apply force in one direction. Here I'm going to apply the force in two directions. Here I'm going to apply the force in three directions. That's why it is named as one-dimensional state of stress, two-dimensional state of stress, three-dimensional state of stress. So here, what is Hooke's law says? When the material is said to be elastic material, when the material is said to be elastic material, stress is always directly proportional to strain within the elastic limit. Are you got it? So listen carefully. What I am saying? So when the material is said to be elastic material, I am writing here, stress is directly proportional to strain within elastic limit. Within elastic limit. Listen carefully here. Stress is directly proportional to strain within elastic limit. So this is not valid for all the components, all type of materials. So if you take 100 types of materials, only some material, only few materials accept this Hooke's law within the elastic limit, but most of the materials accept the Hooke's law in proportional limit. Or you got my point? But there is no any big difference between the proportional point and elastic point. I'll give it to you explanation in a stress strain diagram. What is the different points? So all of you know the stress strain diagram like this. So listen carefully. This is the value of stress and this is the value of strain. We are having this graph like this. We are having the graph like this is the elastic point. This is the proportional limit. This is the elastic point, yield point, lower yield point, and this one is ultimate point. After that, we are getting the break point. So this is the proportional point. This is the elastic point. Both are very close to each other. Both are very, very close to each other. So that we are going to neglect the difference between these 2 points, so that we're going to neglect the difference between these 2 points, right? Because those 2 points are very, very close to each other. So that I'm going to say stress is directly proportional to strain within the elastic limit. Why I'm saying elastic limit? Practically within the proportional limit, but here I'm saying elastic limit. Why? Because these 2 points are very, very close to each other. Very, very close to each other. So that I am saying stress is directly proportional to strain within the elastic limit. Or you got it? So very careful. So observe the points, what I am saying. If you have any doubt, please ask me immediately, no doubt now. So here, this is the proportional point, elastic point, upper yield point, lower yield point, ultimate point, break point. There are different types of points. I'll give the explanation very clearly in the further discussion, no doubt. So, no, so don't bother about those things now. So here, first of all, I'm going to write it here. What is the relation between stress and strain in one-dimensional state of stress? This is under tension or compression. If you indicate the arrow mark like this, it is said to be under compression. If you indicate the arrow mark like this, it is said to be under tension. Are you got my point or not? Along X or along Y, we can take any direction. Or you got my point? So here, in one-dimensional state of stress, Hooke's law says when the material is said to be elastic material, stress is directly proportional to strain within the elastic limit. Right? So that stress is indicated by sigma and strain is indicated by epsilon. If you remove the proportionality constant, we have to put a constant, then I can put a constant that is nothing but E into epsilon. E is nothing but Young modulus. Now here, tell me, why I'm not writing the G value here? All of you know, E Young modulus, G shear modulus. All of you know very well for engineering students. What is G shear modulus? It is Young modulus. So when we can use E value, when the components are subjected to normal forces. Listen carefully. Normal stresses. When the component is subject to normal stresses, we can use E value. When the component is subject to shear stresses, we can use G value. Listen carefully. So that when the component is subject to under shear, according to Hooke's law, shear stress is directly proportional to shear strain. So this is under normal stress. In case of shear stress is directly proportional to shear strain. Shear stress is tau, shear strain phi. If you remove the proportional constant, tau is equal to G into phi here. G is named as shear modulus. And here is Young modulus. Young modulus. Or you got it? So here I can use E in case of normal stresses. I can use G in case of shear modulus. That is under shear stresses. So this is the relation between stress and strain in one-dimensional state of stress, whether it is normal or whether it is shear. Or you got my point? Right. So here I'm writing. So E is equal to how much now? So E is equal to stress by strain. So strain does not have any units. Strain does not have any units. Stress having units, so that is nothing but Newton per meter square. So Young modulus is also expressed either pascals, either kilopascals, or megapascals, or gigapascals. I can express in terms of pascals or kilopascals, megapascals, gigapascals here. So this is the relation between stress and strain in one-dimensional state of stress. At the same time, Hooke says like this. Hooke says like this, listen carefully. When the compound is subject to one-dimensional state of stress, When the body is said to be under strain, when the body is said to be under strain, their dimensions must be vary and the component dimensions will vary. So that how to find the change in dimension of the component? How to find change in dimension of the component, or how to find increase in length of the component, and how to find decrease in length of the component due to tensile, due to compressive force here. Or you got my point? In the chapter, by using the Hooke's law, I want to find what is the increase in length, what is the decrease in length by the application of tensile force and compressive force according to Hooke's law. Or you got it? What I am saying? According to Hooke's law, how to find the increase in length, decrease in length by the application of tensile force and compressive force. So that I'm going to write stress is directly proportional to strain, or stress is equal to E into epsilon. Stress is nothing but P by A and epsilon is nothing but delta L by L. Why I'm writing delta L by L? Why I am not writing delta B by B, delta T by D and delta D by D? There are different types of strains also there. But why I am not writing delta B by B, delta T by D, delta D by D? I am writing delta L by L. Why? Because it is compressive force. It is tensile force. So if it is tensile, length will increase, width will decrease, thickness will also decrease. So in case of compressive force, length will decrease more. Length will decrease more when compared to increase in width and thickness. Or get my point? Here is also when the compound is subjected to under tensile force, length will increase, width also reduce, thickness also reduce. When we compare the dimensions of length, width and thickness, length will increase more when compared to decrease in width and thickness. So that I'm going to neglect the remaining two dimensions. I'm going to take the what is the major dimension will change more here now. That's why I'm taking here delta L by L. Are you got it, my point? Or you got my point? Why I'm writing delta L by L here? So that from this equation, I want to find the delta L is equal to PL by how much? AE. Now, what is the importance of this formula? What is the importance of this formula? By using this formula, we can calculate what is the increase or decrease in length of the component when the component is subjected to either tensile force or compressive force in one-dimensional state of stress. That is clear. Right. Next one, I want to give it to you how to calculate stress and strain relation in two-dimensional state of stress. Listen carefully. I'm writing here relation between stress and strain in two-dimensional state of stress. In two-dimensional state of stress. Now, one-dimensional state of stress is very simple. Stress is directly proportional to strain. But here, it is two-dimensional. So, it is said to be a plane. It is said to be a plane. If it is said to be two-dimensional, it is said to be a plane. If it is having three dimension, it is said to be a solid. It is said to be a solid. If you consider the thickness, it becomes a solid. If you neglect the thickness, it is said to be a plane. So generally, in our nature, how many planes we are having? Three planes, X, Y, Y, Z, Z, X. So if you take this one, if it is a plane, we are having horizontal, we are having vertical. So we are having normal stress, we are having shear stress. Or you got it? So if you take it any point on this plane, so on this plane, we have two types of stresses, normal stress and shear stress. Now listen carefully. When the component is subject to two types of stresses here now, one is sigma x, one is sigma y here in two directions like this, it is named as two-dimensional state of stress. Two-dimensional state of stress. Now I'm going to write the relation between the stress and strain. Here also we are getting epsilon x. Here also we are getting epsilon y. We are getting stress and strain along x and y also. Or you got it? Or you got it? Right. So here, if you want to write the relation between the stress and strain in two-dimensional state of stress, first of all, we have to know how many strains we are getting here. How many strains we are getting here. Listen carefully. So very, very important point here. If you apply the force along x direction, there must be a strain along x and there must be a strain on y also. Are you agree with me? Right. What I am saying, if you apply the force along x direction, there must be a strain along x direction. That means there must be a deformation along x direction. There must be a deformation along y direction, but along y decrease, along x increase. If you apply the force along x, so that if you apply the force along x direction, there are two strains. One is linear strain and the next one is lateral strain. If you apply the force along x, x is linear, y is lateral. If you apply the force along y is linear, x is lateral. Or you got it? Why? Because both are perpendicular to each other. I have already told you. Or you got my point or not? So, first of all, we have to write the relation between the lateral strain and the linear strain so that we are getting one term. The term is always named as Poisson ratio. Poisson ratio. So by defining the Poisson ratio, then we are going to write the relation between the stress and strain in two-dimensional state of stress. Now, some textbooks, the Poisson ratio indicated by symbol nu. In some cases, m also. In some cases, that is 1 by m. In some cases, they are indicated as mu also. This is mu, this is nu. All are same. All are the symbols for Poisson ratio. Or you got my point or not? Right. So what is the definition of Poisson ratio here? That is lateral strain divided by linear strain. So that is the value of Poisson ratio. What is the definition of Poisson ratio? Why we are going to write the Poisson ratio here? So if you want to write the relation between stress and strain in two dimensional, but in case of one dimensional, there is no requirement of Poisson ratio. Listen carefully. In case of one-dimensional state of stress, there is no need of Poisson ratio. But here, in two-dimensional state of stress, there must be a there must be Poisson ratio is required. So that what is the Poisson ratio? Lateral strain by linear strain. So here, now listen carefully. Poisson ratio is equal to lateral strain by linear strain. I am writing here lateral strain is equal to Poisson ratio into linear strain. This is the relation between lateral strain and linear strain. Now tell me one thing. Both are in same direction or opposite direction? Lateral and linear. Tell me. Both are in same direction. That is, both are positive or both are negative or both are in opposite direction. Tell me one thing now. Tell me about this. Both are same or both are opposite? Both are opposite. One is increase, one is reduce. So that I'm going to put negative here. I'm going to put negative here. So both are opposite to each other. Both are opposite to each other. That is the relation between lateral and linear strain. Now I'm going to write the relation between stress and strain in two-dimensional state of stress. Listen carefully here. Listen carefully. Listen carefully. If you apply the force along x direction, there must be a strain along x. There must be a strain along y. All of it clear. What is the total strain here? Total strain along x is equal to linear strain along x direction plus lateral strain along y direction. Are you agree with me? If you apply the force along x direction, then we are having two types of strains. Linear strain, lateral strain. Linear strain is along x, lateral strain along y. But here, linear strain is nothing but epsilon x plus this one is epsilon y. This is a lateral, this is linear. But what is the relation between stress and strain in any one direction? That is, stress is always equal to E into strain, E into strain, and strain is always equal to sigma by E. This is the relation. Are you got it? Anybody have doubt, please ask me immediately. So I will give the explanation now. So here I am writing epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E. So I am writing here sigma x by E. This is the linear stress along x direction. What is the lateral strain along y? Lateral strain is equal to Poisson minus Poisson ratio into so sigma y linear. I have given in previous formula. Already I told you. So here I am writing epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma y by E. So that is the value of total strain along x direction. It is also named as relation between stress and strain in along x direction. So in the same way also we can write for y direction also. So what the total strain along y direction? Epsilon y is equal to, here y is linear, x is lateral. So sigma y by E is linear minus Poisson ratio into sigma x by E is lateral. Or you got it my point? So here two strains we are getting. I'm getting strain along x and strain along y. It is also named as relation between stress and strain along x direction. So this is stress and strain relation along y direction. So by using the Poisson ratio, we can write the relation between the stress and strain along x and y direction in two-dimensional state of stress. Or you got it here now? So anybody have doubt, please inform to me. So I'll clarify your doubts also. No problem, right? All right. So I'm going to write what is the relation between stress and strain in three-dimensional state of stress. Listen carefully. Record Huxla. All are record Huxla. All right. So here, in case of three-dimensional state of stress, so I'm writing directly. If you take total strain along x, so for example, if you take this is the component along x, along y, and along z. This is a sigma x, sigma y, and this is sigma z. Now tell me the formula. We can write the formula. What is the total strain along x? What is the total strain along x? X is linear, y and z is lateral. So I am writing sigma x by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma y by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma z by E. This is the total strain along x direction. As same as what is the total strain along y direction? Y is linear, remaining two are lateral. So sigma y by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma x by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma z by E. Alright, got it? Right. I am going to write epsilon z here. Epsilon z here. What is epsilon z? Z is linear. That is sigma z by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma x by E minus Poisson ratio into sigma y by E. So these are the values of strain and stress relation along x and y and z according to Uxula by using Poisson ratio. This is the relation between stress and strain in three-dimensional. Then I want to find the volumetric strain. That is, what is the total strain here? Total strain is nothing but epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z. It is also named as volumetric strain. Is equal to epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z. If you add all these values, you will get one relation. That is epsilon v is equal to So I can get like this. So add these three now. That is sigma x plus sigma y plus sigma z divided by E minus. So you will get two terms of x, two terms of y, two terms of z value in terms of Poisson ratio. So 2 Poisson ratio into sigma x plus sigma y plus sigma z by E value. So I'm going to take the common term here, that is sigma x plus sigma y plus sigma z divided by E into 1 minus d nu. So this is the value of volumetric strain when the component is subject to um, three mutual perpendicular state of stress. Are you got it? So here there are, we can in examination point of view, they will ask different types of questions on this one also. Now tell me one thing here. So here sigma x, sigma y, sigma z is equal to same. That is sigma x, sigma y, sigma z all are same. That is also named as isostatic state of stress. Isostatic state of stress. In isostatic state of stress, I am writing here sigma x equal to sigma y is equal to sigma z is equal to sigma. Then what happens here? This value epsilon v is equal to 3 sigma divided by E into 1 minus d nu. So this is the value of volumetric strain when the component is subject to isostatic state of stress, that is equal stresses in all directions. Now I want to give one more question on this one. They will ask like this. Uh, if you apply any type of force on the component, so the component does not undergo any expansion, does not undergo any contraction, then what is its Poisson ratio? Can you give this answer for this now? Can you give the answer for this? What I am saying here, I know the value. So here sigma x equal to sigma y is equal to sigma z is equal to sigma, or you got it, but no extension or contraction. Then what is the value of Poisson ratio in the material? Infinity. No, that is not infinity. See this one. What is the formula? We know that volumetric strain is equal to change in volume by original volume. It is also is equal to 3 sigma by E into 1 minus d nu. If there is no expansion, if there is no contraction, then what is the change in volume? No contraction, no expansion, change in volume becomes zero. Or you got it? So this value becomes zero. If the value becomes zero, then I am writing here. So 3 sigma by E is also into 1 minus 2 E is also is equal to zero. Or you got it? Right. Then I am writing 1 minus 2 is equal to 0. Then 1 is equal to 2 nu. Then nu is equal to 1 by 2. It is equal to 0 0.5. So the Poisson ratio varies from 0 to 0 0.5. So there are different types of materials we are using. So negative Poisson ratio is also there some materials, but not we are going to use such type of material in most of the engineering practical cases. But here the Poisson ratio is varies from 0 to 0.5. There are different types of materials which are having different types of Poisson ratio. I'll give it to you later in solving the problems, which material having how much Poisson ratio. I'll give it to you. Okay, don't bother about those things now. So here two conditions is over. One is set to be when the component is subject to isostatic state of stress, and the second one is named as when this component does not undergo any extension, any contraction by the application of any tension or compression in all directions. Then this Poisson ratio becomes 0 0.5. So there are some materials having some values of Poisson ratio. I'll give it to you later. Don't bother about those things. So after this one is clear. So what is the relation between stress and strain in one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional? according to Hooke's law. So all of it clear? So anybody have doubts on this one now? Please ask me. If you have any doubt, please. So three things is clear. What is the definition of stress? What is the definition of strain? And how to write the relation between the stress and the strain. All of it clear? Anybody have doubts in this one now? Please ask me now. So right. So now I'm going to explain the next one. That is nothing but how to apply Hooke's law. So what is the application of Hooke's law here? So application of Hooke's law. So are you able to see the letters clearly? Are you able to see the letters clearly with blue pen? So otherwise, I can use black. Anybody give the response for this? Blue or black? Black. Okay, okay, thank you. So you are not seeing properly with blue color. Okay. So if you have any problem, please tell me immediately, then I will rectify that one. Right. So now here I'm going to write it. So what is the application of Hooke's law? So all of you know it, Hooke's law in this chapter, by using the Hooke's law, we are going to find what is the increase in length, what is the decrease in length when the component is subject to either tensile force or compressive force. Are you got it? Right. So here I'm writing first case number one, uniform cross section of bars. I'm going to apply Hooke's law for uniform cross-sectional bars. For example, I am taking the bar which is having three dimensions, length, width, and thickness. So this is the force which is acting on this bar. That is nothing but tensile force. You can apply compressive force also, no problem. I'm going to divide this bar into three parts. That is, this one is L1, this one is L2, this one is L3. All parts are made of same material. So listen carefully. First of all, after that we can made with different types of materials also, but having same area of cross section. This area is nothing but A1, this one is A2, and this one is A3. But here A1 is equal to A2 is equal to A3. That is having uniform cross section of the bar. And this material is made of same material. Otherwise, we can use different types of materials also. Here is nothing but E1, here is nothing but E2, here is nothing but E3. Why I'm writing E1, E2, E3? This component is subject to which forces? Normal forces. If the component is subject to normal forces, we can use Young modulus. Okay, right? So if you have any doubt, please ask me. But here, if all are made of same material, if all parts are made of same material, E1 is equal to E2 is equal to E3. Otherwise, U1 is not equal to U2 is not equal to U3. Now here, I want if you apply the tensile force on this component, so due to this tensile force, there must be a expansion of this bar. That is total expansion of this bar. I want to find total expansion of this bar due to the tensile force P. So this part is also expand, this part is also expand, this part is also expand. So this part expansion is I'm going to write is delta L1. This part expansion is I'm going to delta L2. This part expansion is I'm writing delta L3. But according to Hooke's law, I have already given the formula. Delta L is equal to how much? PL by A. We know that formula. So I'm writing here total expansion is equal to delta L1 is nothing but P1 L1 by A1 E1 plus P2 L2 divided by A2 E2 plus P3 L3 divided by A3 E3. So if all are, so in this equation, what is the force on each bar, each part? What is the force on each part now? Force on each part is same. So P is common. What is the uniform cross section means? What is the A value is also same. So P by A is same. P by A is same. So I'm writing here, I'm writing L1 by E1 plus L2 by E2 plus L3 by E3. If all are made of same material, then E1, E2, E3 is also same. Then I'm writing here P by A into E into L1 plus L2 plus how much? L3. So this is the value of total elongation of the bar when the bar is made of different material or same material. We can take any condition, we can apply like this, then we can find the total elongation of the bar according to Hooke's law. For uniform cross section, there is no any change in cross section of the bar now. All of you got it? Right. This formula we can directly apply and we can find the what is the total expansion of the bar. I will give it to you after completion of the theory. I will give the problems which are given in GATE examination on this model now. Okay, don't bother about this. So second one, I'm going to explain to you that is varying cross section of the bars. This one, I'm going to give it to you that is varying cross section of the bar. Case number 2. Varying cross section bars. Varying cross section bars. So for example, varying cross section bars means area is different. So I'm taking here, this is the bar. This is the bar which is subject to a tensile force or compressive force. This is the axis of the bar now. This one is L1, this one is L2, this one is L3, this one is A1, A2, A3. This one is E1, E2, E3. Now I can use same formula, that is total expansion is equal to delta L1 plus delta L2 plus delta L3. I can write the same formula P1 L1 by A1 E1 plus, so P2 L2 divided by A2 E2 plus P3 L3 by, so A3 E3. So what is the values are common here? Area is not same, area is vary. Young modulus same when the material is same. And P is same on all parts. This is one part, this is one part, this is one part. So P by E is common when all are made of same material. And we are writing here L1 by A1 plus L2 by A2 plus L3 by A3. So this is the formula we can use to calculate what is the total expansion of the bar which is having varying cross section along its length according to Hooke's law. According to Hooke's law, I'll give the problems, don't worry. I will give the problems on uniform cross section and varying cross sections, which are given in GATE and other competitive exams also. If you solve those problems, we can get the confidence to solve those, to solve this type of problems now. So this is the case number 2, how to apply Hooke's law. And case number 3 is very, very important. So we can take care about that thing now. That is nothing but extension due to self-weight. So extension due to self-weight. Now listen carefully. So how to find extension due to self-weight? Actually, extension is always occurs due to application of the external force. But what I am saying here, extension due to self-weight. But that means I'm not applying any external force. Now see this one. This is the bar I am taking. This is a vertical cantilever beam which is fixed at top and which is free at the bottom. And this is the length of the bar L, and this is the area of cross section A at the bottom. So it is also uniform cross section of the bar from x equal to 0 to x equal to L here along the length of the bar. It is also a uniform cross section of the bar from x equal to 0 to x equal to L here. What I am saying here, extension due to self weight. We know the formula according to Uxla, delta L is equal to how much? PL by A. I'm going to apply the same formula. But here, this formula we can apply for the case when the component is subject to external force or not. Listen carefully. That formula is always applicable for the case of when the component is subject to external force. Are you got it? Right. But here, there is no any external force. But how to find the extension of the bar due to internal forces? Now listen carefully here. Listen carefully. Here, there is no external force. So here I am writing here external force is zero. That is zero. Now tell me, if the external force is zero, what is the stress at the bottom? Stress is also zero at the bottom. But what is the stress here now? If there is no external force, is also zero. But here, due to the self weight, I'm going to give the explanation. Listen carefully. I am taking a small element on this bar, which is at a height of x from the bottom. And the thickness of this one is also dx. Thickness one is dx. Now, okay, very simple. So don't bother about those things now. It's very simple. Now, can you give the answer for this? When I ask a question, can you give the answer how much force acting on the small elemental area? Can you give the answer now? How do I know if I missed this message? Right. So I will verify it next. Right. How much force is acting on the small elemental area? So here on this elemental area, the bottom portion having some weight. The weight of the bottom portion is nothing but weight is equal to how much? M into G. The weight of the bottom portion is must be acting on this element. Due to that weight, the element undergoes some deformation. Or you got my point or not? Now, if you take another element here, on this element, force will increase or not? So, if you take another element here, so on this element, force is less. Increase, 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 increase. When the force increases, what is the value of stress here? Stress is always equal to force by area, but area is always uniform, that is constant. Okay, right? So here sigma is equal to P by A. When P is goes on increases, when area is constant, what is the value of stress here goes on increases? So now tell me, due to extension due to self weight, at the bottom there is no force, but above the bottom there must be a force due to its self weight. So if you take at this point, 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 the force is gradually goes on increases, but the area of cross section is uniform, constant. So when force is increases and area is constant, automatically stress is also increased. So stress is the maximum here, and stress is zero here. Or you got my point? Due to its self weight, I am saying. If you are not considered self weight, if you are not consider external force, stress at the bottom, stress at the top, both are zero. Or you got my point? What I am saying? So at the bottom, at the top, stress is zero. When we can get the board stress at the bottom, at the top is zero. If you are not consider the external force, if you are not consider the self weight of the material, then the stress at the bottom, at the top is zero. Now the next point, if you consider the self weight only, if you are not consider the external force, I am writing here. First one, without external and self weight. And what is the stress is zero at bottom and top. And next one, this second case, sub case I am saying, without external and with the self weight. Then what happened? So sigma is zero at bottom, sigma is zero at bottom, and sigma is maximum at the top. Now tell me, when the sigma is maximum, where the stress is maximum, at that point the component goes on fail. Is it right or not? So we are going to design the component without failure. So where the stress is maximum, I want to increase the strength of that material at that point. So how to increase strength? So if you want to increase the strength, we have to add the material. So we have to add the material here. If you add the material here, then automatically the strength of this beam will also increase. So I can increase this. I can design like this. I can increase the material like this. So this material will add it here. Or you got my point or not? So I'll give you more explanation later in bending stress and beams. So here, in the second case, without external force and with self weight, sigma is zero at the bottom, sigma is maximum at the top. But in this case, how to find the extension now? In this case, how to find the extension now? Due to self weight, we are not considering any external force. Now tell me here, what is the extension of this element? Extension of the element is nothing but delta L. Delta L is equal to PL by AE. Are you got it? What is P here? P is nothing but weight of the bottom portion. So P is also is equal to weight. Weight is also is equal to M into G. We know that mass is nothing but density into volume into G. I am writing rho into G is nothing but specific weight. All of you know it. Volume is nothing but area into length. What is this area? A. And what is length of the element? Dx divided by. That is the weight of this bottom portion. That is delta L is equal to weight divided by how much? A. Or you got it? So here is a length is also there. So length is nothing but x. This is the length of the bottom. Or you got it? So A both are cancelled. I got W into X into dx divided by E here. This is delta. This is the delta, that is change in extent, change in length of the small elemental area. But I want to find the change in length of this total bar now. Total bar means the limits are there, that x equal to 0 to x equal to L here. So I'm going to integrate from x equal to 0 to x equal to L here. I'm writing so specific weight by E into x square divided by 2 up to the limits 0 to L. Then what is the value we get it now? That is delta L is equal to, so W into L square divided by 2 times of E is the value of total expansion of the bar due to its self weight. Are you got it? So do you have any doubt? Please ask me immediately. The formula is very important, but the explanation is not important for you. You have to remember the formula. So if you remember the formula, we can attempt the each and every question in GATE examination, totally formula based. But we have to learn the concept also. So it is not possible to remember all the formula in GATE in our subject, but we have to remember the concept also. Okay, all right. So this is the formula in specific weight. I want to find in total weight. I want to find the total weight. So specific weight is nothing but weight by volume. Weight by volume. Or you got it or not? So what is the volume here now? The volume weight is nothing but W. Volume is nothing but area into length for total volume I'm writing. So here I'm going to substitute here delta L is equal to, so W divided by A into L into L square divided by 2E. L both are cancelled. Then you can write delta L is equal to WL divided by 2AE is the value of expansion of the bar due to self weight in terms of total weight. This is in terms of specific weight. So take care about the options here. In GATE examination, they will give the 4 options. So check the 4 options. They have given the answer in specific weight or total weight. Check those options, then we can identify it. Or you got it or not? So this is the total expansion of the bar due to its self weight in terms of total weight. This is with or without external force. This is without external force. Now, if you take with external force, what happened? Now, I'm writing here. All of it clear here? I'm writing here. Case number third case here. with external force and self weight. Now, anybody tell me with external force with self weight, what is the total expansion here? We can say easily. That is expansion due to self weight plus expansion due to which one? External force. Due to self weight is we know that WL by 2AE. What is the external force here? External force is P. I am writing here. So I am writing due to external force PL by AE. Or you got it? So here I am taking one assumption. This is the total expansion of the bar with external force and the internal force also. That is nothing but self weight. Now tell me, so there is any possibility to equate the self weight and external force? Can you apply the same amount of external force which is equal to self weight? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. We can apply the same amount of external force which is equal to its self weight. So I am writing here when W is equal to P. When W is equal to how much? P. Then I am writing total delta L is equal to WL divided by 2 times of AE plus WL divided by, so AE, which one is common here? Which one is common here? That is WL divided by AE is common into 1 by 2 plus 1 we are getting. Then I am writing here WL by AE into how much? 3 by 2. So this is the value of total expansion of the bar due to its self weight and along with external force when the external force is equal to internal force. That is the condition I am writing here now. So when they both are not equal, we can apply this formula. When both are equal, apply this formula. That is 3 by 2 times of WL by AE. Are you got it or not? Are you got it? So this is the expansion due to self weight. So three cases is over. How to apply the Hooke's law? That is, the first one is due to when the bars are having uniform cross section. Second one is nothing but bars are having varying cross section. And third one is nothing but bars due to its self weight. In this self weight, we are having three subtopics. So one is both forces are being neglected. Internal force, external force, both are neglected. There is no expansion. There is no stress in the material. At the same time, the second case, the second subcase, without external force with self weight. Third subcase with external force with the self weight. So in that case also we are having W is equal to P, then we can get the required value. All get it? Up to this one is all of it clear? Anybody have doubts on this one? Please ask me. All of you able to understand each and every points? Anybody have doubts on this? Please. So time is over. So 5 o'clock. Is now 5 o'clock now. Then I'm going to close the class. Tomorrow I will take the class at the same time. So anybody have doubts on this? So remaining topics I will be the explanation tomorrow or according to your schedule. Anybody? One of you. Okay, right. Thank you very much for all of you to support me. And please give your feedback. So anybody have doubts, please send it to my WhatsApp number. I will give my number to your coordinator. Then we can send to them. Then they will send to him to me. Then I will clarify each and every doubts here. Okay. So please ask me if you have anybody have doubts on this. Okay. So I want to know my feedback. Please give me the feedback now. Can we leave? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We can leave the class now. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to all of you.